So I have an extended family member who has differing political viewpoints than I do. Let's call this person Sam, which is probably nebulous enough. Sam is someone I respect deeply, who's incredibly kind and thoughtful and hardworking, and historically always looks at the brighter side and brings peace to most situations. Sam has also become a Fox News watcher avidly. Maybe always was, I'm not sure. And it's to the point where when we have big family sort of gatherings, Sam and I are explicitly banned from discussing politics. Like others in the family are like, just don't go
No.
there, don't talk about it. And yet,
Mhm.
the different points of view are still there. And in my mind, politics is pretty personal. So how can we not talk about it, right? And how can we not have it come up?
Mhm.
And I think, to that point, like that is really frustrating because what isn't political these days? It's very hard to separate out what is and what
So,
isn't.
yes, most of the folks who we offered this opportunity to be interviewed, coached, counseled, sort of through this episode, turned down the opportunity because they are so frustrated with their family members and also prefer to kind of put their head in the sand, ignore, be quiet, don't mention the differences. So I am here as the guinea pig for
Mhm.
all of our listeners.
Yeah.
Let's teach me how to have difficult conversations.
And I'm here to learn as well. So I personally cannot wait.
Now, welcome to the podcast. What do you mean by that? We are your co hosts, Sara and me, Sasha, and we are joined by an incredible guest today. Would you please introduce yourself?
Incredible. Okay. Incredible. I'm not sure what that means here, but yes. So Bill Doherty. I live in St. Paul, Minnesota. I have taught marriage and family therapy for 40 some years. Recently retired as a faculty member at the University of Minnesota. And I co-founded a nonprofit called Braver Angels, which deals with um, healing divides between reds and blues. And so I've combined an interest in depolarization with my interest in family relationships. So I've done some coaching of people about how to be able to talk about politics in a way that doesn't hurt the relationship, maybe even helps it.
And I think you're incredible because we met on the stage of the American Psychological Association when I was moderating a panel that you were featured on about the political polarization in America. And I think the way not just your intellect and experience speak to it, but the way that your personality really shows up in a way that seems authentic and approachable makes me feel a little bit less terrified about having this conversation on a recorded line. I'm trepidatious. We used the word before we hit the record button, nervous sighted. But I'm also excited. So I'm excited about what's going to happen in this conversation.
Yeah, and I appreciate your courage in doing this because if we don't talk about this stuff, nobody gets any better at it, and and that mirrors our country, right? So the micro and the macro go together here.
Yeah, and just wanted to add, while I'm not part of this conversation per se, I'm really excited to be here as a bystander and somewhat infrequent participant in the conversation. As I too want to learn more about how to address this, because even if you don't have a family member, let's say I don't personally have a family member that I have this difference with, but given where we are today, you're going to come across people in your lives that it is going to be really difficult to
Hmm.
talk to. So
Hmm.
how can we talk across differences? I think is the real question that I am always thinking about. So, Bill, I'm going to let you and Sara take it from here, and I
Okay,
can't wait to find out more.
okay. So Sarah, it's often best for me to hear a typical exchange, really right from the beginning. Like we had a video camera and we took you and Sam's, prototypical exchange that upsets other people in the family, right? Who silenced you all. So, how does it start? Who begins? Tell me about it.
Yeah. Even when you ask that question, just for the record, my heart started beating faster and I got a little short of breath. And so even thinking about it, I'm noticing that my body's like, why are we talking about this right now?
Yeah.
Because if I think about an exchange, it often is prompted by something, whether it's a news headline or just conversation. So, for example, I'm a Harvard graduate, and something came up, and this year where Harvard stood against the Trump administration, and so when we were hanging out, it was kind of like, so, what do you think about what's going on at Harvard? And and
And
I,
who said that?
Sam, Sam
Sam
said
said
that,
that.
like
Okay.
a sort of an aside, and it's so broad that I'm like, I don't even know where to go with it.
Sure.
And then oftentimes in the past, I can't even remember a specific example right now, but I do know, I can't remember what we were talking about, but I, I said something and Sam comes back at me with all sorts of facts from Fox News. And I might even air quote facts, but I often feel like I in that moment because it's something that's so meaningful to me and I know is not factually correct, but I am not the person like maybe lawyer Misasha might have this brain that can rapid
Hmm.
fire pull out the facts. I
Yeah.
don't have that. I need to go back and research and get all of that information. So I instantly feel on the back foot like I know what you're saying is not factually correct, but
Hmm.
I can't battle you right now and I feel overwhelmed instantly.
Sure. So let's go back though to I'd like to take an example, okay, and just sort of micro it, really. Yeah.
Okay.
And so who usually brings something up that's controversial? Is it you or Sam?
Sam. I tend to leave it to Sam except when it was something like, yeah, what's happening right now with these immigrants is something that's come up. Let's ground it in the immigrant conversation, for
Okay.
example,
Okay.
because they're talking about using words like the illegals and they're criminals and this sort of stuff. My husband is an immigrant. And so it's very personal. My mother is an immigrant to this country. And so like when they come after immigrants, for example, I will just have to say something and
Okay,
hold the line.
let's keep it with Sam rather than they.
Okay.
Okay, because it's big enough just with Sam. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So, but I want to get clear who usually initiates the
Sam.
conversation. Sam
Sam.
does.
Yep.
Okay, you do sometimes.
But mostly it's Sam. I
Okay.
remember instances where we were at a table and Sam said, okay, so are those kids of yours getting brainwashed into CRT?
Okay. So Sam often begins provocatively.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wouldn't have said that, but yes, I think it
That
sounds like it
that
now that
is
I'm.
that is a provocative opening.
Yep.
Okay. Is that generally what he does? I mean, when you mentioned the Harvard thing, what did he say to open that conversation?
Yeah, what I said, like, so what do you think about what's going on, what Harvard's doing or
Well,
something?
that's not provocative. I mean, that was a question that invited you to respond. So I'm just, it's so different. A lot of these conversations go badly within the first three exchanges. I think of it
Yeah.
like a tennis match, a serve, a return, and then a volley back. It almost always happens right there. Okay.
Yeah. And I think it feels maybe I'm interpreting it as provocative given the history
Okay.
and given the setting. Usually it's in some peaceful place. We're all just hanging out and it feels
Yeah.
really like, whoa, why like I'm okay having conversations, but it feels out of the blue. It's not like we're discussing the current state
Okay. Got it.
and it's I get feel caught off guard often.
Okay. Yeah. And so sometimes it's overtly provocative, like your kids being brainwashed. That's, oof. Okay. And then sometimes it's more neutral question, but you're expecting whatever you say, he's going to come back at you. So he'll be provocative when he responds to what you say. That's what you're anticipating. And that usually is what happened.
I think that's fair to say. I feel that it is. And
Yeah.
I don't think the intention is to attack me or make me feel defensive, but I do feel that way.
Well, your kid's going to be or being brainwashed for CRT is pretty provocative.
That's true.
Okay. right. And so could we start with that one? Do you remember that?
Sure. Yeah, I remember that very clearly.
Yeah. And were there other people around? What was the setting?
Yep, there were other people around. We're all
Okay.
hanging out around a table.
Hanging out, and then out of nowhere comes this hand grenade.
Yes. And we were about to leave, actually.
Oh, okay. Okay. Parting blow, parting shots, shot over the bow. Okay. Um, and what's his nonverbals when he does it? Is he uh,
Very
smiling, angry? What's he look like?
not angry, never angry.
Okay.
Slight smile, like a curious, but like kind of like so kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. So we're gonna have a little fun with you here.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So not hostile.
No. No, and
Uh,
I think there's mutual respect between us
yeah.
as
Okay.
people.
So let's bear that in mind. So you do feel you respect him. You said that. So this is a really important part of our conversation because people listening in could demonize Sam. Okay. Um, but he does. You do feel respected by him, and his style is kind of he kind of connects through uh, being provocative and parlaying, criticisms, and he probably sees you as pretty smart, and he may be curious about what you'll say. I'm just guessing on that part, but the smile, the kind of in his mind, maybe even playful.
Maybe.
Okay, so he says um, again, out of the blue, other people around, and this is important, by the way, because when other people around, the tension level is much higher,
Hmm.
and the chances of things going badly are higher. Okay, um, and so there's other people around. He says, so say it again. Your kids are
So are your kids getting brainwashed about this CRT
right,
stuff?
right, okay. And then what did you say?
I was really proud of myself in that moment, actually. I took a gigantic breath.
Okay, okay,
Um, and I don't always remember to do that. And I remember like being like, okay, here it is. Like I thought we hung out this whole time and nothing was gonna happen. I was like, here it is.
there it is.
And so I took a deep breath and I remember saying, so CRT is not what is often portrayed to like this one I had unlocked. Like my
Ah,
intellect kicked
know
in.
something about this puppy, right?
Mostly because of Misasha and the podcast that we've done. And I
Okay.
basically was like, CRT happens not to be taught in the K through 12 curriculum. And
Mhm.
if you're talking about culturally responsive teaching, it's
Yeah.
one thing, but you're thinking about it as this, the way that it's portrayed in the media is about like this
Yeah.
higher education thing. And I remember that conversation being able to like leave it as a sentence or two and then being able to be like, I said my part, I can walk away.
Okay. So tell me what happened then. You said your thing. You're prepared for this one, and then what happened next?
I feel like there was a follow-up question, but because we were literally leaving, I remember being like, well, I better get myself ready to go and I'm out of here. Like
Okay.
I rushed out of there because I didn't I don't like feeling judged. I don't like feeling like I
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
like
No, this is your kids, right? I mean, it implied you're standing by while your children are being brainwashed,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. And I felt like I got to say my piece like no, I am they are not and
Okay.
definitively be able to answer that and then explain like a little bit about where the misperception was.
Okay. And he said something else. I mean, he must have had some sort of
Yeah, I think it was like, oh, that's interesting. That's not how I understand it, but kind of thing.
okay. So it wasn't a further attack at that point.
I think I was afraid, and that's why I rushed through and tried to leave.
Okay, so he said something and then you got out of Dodge. Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
which is not always like
Not
how I
always
want it to
possible.
be. Yeah.
Sure, 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 sure. Okay. So could we? talk about this little exchange here as an example, and it's going to drill down a little bit more?
Sure.
Okay. Um, uh, my view is just because somebody asks a question, it doesn't mean you have to answer it.
Hmm.
In every communication, there's a content level and a relationship level. Okay. And so content, that you could diagram the words and so on. The relationship level is how somebody is positioning themselves in relationship with you. And there are, in any relationship, there are things that are appropriate to say within the relationship because they're not one up and they're not out of line. And there are other things that people don't have the right, if you will, out of the blue, in this case, to challenge your parenting. Does
Hmm.
that make sense?
Yeah.
It was a one up judgmental statement,
Yeah.
right? Um, and and so the relationship level was way off.
Interesting. How would I know that in that moment? Like, is that like body?
That's it. That's it.
So if you feel that way, like,
Yeah.
like I was saying, sometimes I'm over like reading into it too much because I'm so
Right.
primed to be defensive.
Well, yeah, but this was yeah. You have to, if you're immediately on the defensive, and somebody didn't just calmly express a viewpoint. So a calm viewpoint would be, I've been reading about CRT and little kids, and I'm troubled about whether little kids are kind of being, brainwashed, blah, blah, blah. A little thing, and say, do they do that at your kid's school, or just, you want to talk to me about it? Same topic, but the relationship is equals here.
So completely
Mhm.
different. You're
Mm.
absolutely right.
Yeah, yeah. And even in like even our relationship right now, you brought me in as this expert and so on, but only in this area. So it would be out of line for me to say, what are those dumb posters on your wall behind you? Right? Like, Bill, where did that come from? Right? That's not what we're here to. By the way, I don't think they're dumb, but I just wanted to. There's some things that I don't have a right to comment on that, and that's not what we're here for. And it would be a mistake for you to say, well, I kind of like my posters, and then why they mean something to me. And so, because I just asked you an intrusive question that was not in keeping with our relationship. You're not asking me for, interior decorating advice.
That's so true. So how does one respond in a productive way
Yeah. when
when someone's coming after you, or what feels like coming after you in that way, if you want to not flip the table and be like, that's it, I'm done with you, like how do you respond in a healthy way?
Well, you respond at the relationship level. You don't respond to the content. And so let's take my little silly example here. So if I had out of the blue said, I have those posters, whatever, what are you going to have those for? What might you have said to me other than you like them and they're some of your favorite things? What might you have said?
I Misasha, what would you say? I need help here. Like,
No, don't turn to her.
I
Oh, you can't phone a friend.
might say like, wow, what made you say that?
Yes, perfect. Like, what the heck was that about, Bill?
Yeah, maybe even channel the name of the podcast. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, there you go. Right. Exactly. Exactly. You would not take the content because the content was not legitimate. It was intrusive. It was invasive. It was critical out of the blue, and it was one up. And so going back to your to Sam, um, what might you say to him if you get this sort of hand grenade out of the blue?
Maybe push back and be like, what prompted you to ask that?
Yeah, yeah, something like that. Yeah. Where are you coming from with a question like that?
I like that. Like it takes the power back.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah.
Huh.
See, when people ask provocative or intrusive questions, um, they are assuming some power that you didn't give them. Okay, and so you want to level the playing field, but not go one up on him. Okay, so this is the challenge of not going, there you go again, Sam, blah blah blah, because then you're then treating him like he's in the adolescent who is misbehaving, and you just went one up. And so it's how to be in an adult role, neither go one down, which inevitably, if you start to defend yourself, or even in this case, explain a CRT, um, when he's not asking you about CRT.
Hmm. I love hearing this out loud because whether it's because I tend to be a sincere person and like I want to help and that kind of stuff, like my energy would be to let me explain this to you. Let me help you understand, as opposed to being able to listen to what my body's saying, which is like,
Yeah,
dude, this is not like feeling good.
right,
And
right,
then being able to hold a boundary and saying like interrupting and being like, actually, like, what do you mean? I don't get what you're trying to ask,
right,
really.
right,
Okay.
right, right, right.
That's helpful.
I remember a Dear Abby or Ann Landers column way back when somebody wrote in. She was recently divorced, and then people would say, "Oh, why'd you get divorced?" And she would then, marriage is hard and blah blah blah. And so Dear Abby said, if you don't want to say, and particularly if it's not your closest friend, okay, is you could say, why do you ask? I thought it was beautiful. Okay. It's because it's signaling. Yeah, I'm not going to go there with you.
Yeah, I love that. What about when it's situations where they're not like trying to power position you,
Right.
but you're not sure if they really care about the facts. They're just kind of going off on a situation.
Okay. Let's do one there. Let's do an example, even if it's a kind of a made up one with him. But let's get specific.
I mean, if we go, would the immigrant stuff work in this case? Like,
Okay.
um, yes, the administration right now should absolutely be deporting immigrants and like because they commit the most crime, like, sort of spouting
Sure.
incorrect
Okay. And
facts.
so how did this conversation get going?
This one got started because we were in a car and there were unhoused people asking for money. And
Okay.
I may have provocatively made the point that, maybe not provocatively, I may have made the point that, look, there are all these white people begging for money. And in our community, a lot of there was a ton of Venezuelan immigrants who were bussed up from the borders in Texas. I think there was something like 30,000 immigrants in 1 year alone. And so a lot of them were looking for jobs, but every time you see them panhandling, they're hustling with selling flowers or like trying to clean your windshield or doing stuff versus a lot of this is totally anecdotal based on the people you see in your car, right? Like a
Sure,
very
sure,
small
sure,
sample set,
sure.
unscientific, but a lot of the white folks are unkept begging for money saying, with a sign.
Okay. Okay. So then my question for you, Sarah, is what were you hoping to accomplish by saying that?
They had previously been talking about
That
the
they know.
rules. Sorry, Sam had previously been talking about uh, the administration and, coming down hard on immigrants. And I think part of what I wanted to make the point of was also like just there was an element of racism baked into the
Okay.
statements, and I
Okay.
wanted to point that out.
Okay. And you wanted to point that out because,
Because my husband's an immigrant and my mom's an immigrant. My mom's Japanese, my husband's white.
Okay.
Like these issues are personal
Because
and
it feels important and feels personal to you.
yes.
And you brought it up to Sam because what
I
were you
wanted
hoping to accomplish with Sam?
I was hoping, gosh, this is hard, that Sam would stop railing about immigrants as if they're
Ah,
one
yeah,
monolithic experience.
yeah. So you wanted to change Sam's mind about
Yeah.
something that he has very fixed views on.
Yes. I feel sort of shameful admitting that, but yes, I did want to change
Of
Sam's
course.
views.
Yeah, because he's wrong. And he represents millions of people who think a certain way. And so you brought it up in order to make a point that you hope would be persuasive to Sam, that he may think a little differently about this. How did it go?
It
What did he say?
it was a quiet moment in the car. No sort of like oh, it was one of those okay. And I think at a later time when I specifically, and I felt kind of like bold for saying it, but I've made it personal where I basically said the reason I care so much about your opinion of this is because my husband's an immigrant, like
Mhm, mhm.
because I have immigrants in my community and this is so much more nuanced than you make it
Okay,
sound to
you're
me.
telling me what you said later. What did he
Yeah.
do? As far as you know, what did Sam do with what you said?
Respectfully bit his tongue and said nothing back to me.
Okay, got it. Got it. Okay. My guess is that he felt you had gone one up,
Mm,
that you had some data, even if it was anecdotal, that he couldn't probably refute. So he didn't have I'm just guessing, but he didn't have a retort. But if I were interviewing Sam and I asked him how he felt when you kind of out of the blue made a sociological commentary on the local, scene here, which was directed to correct his misperceptions, he would. He, how do you think he would feel?
that I was trying to prove my knowledge and make him feel wrong.
Yeah, yeah, kind of a little loss of face if he didn't have any retort to that. And if people feel a little loss of face, they feel resentful. It's, small. But what I'm saying is that in the context of your relationship, it's it fuels the next time he's ready to pounce when he
Okay.
feels more secure in an area.
Mm, yeah. So I have to, one of the things that I learned at the conference that we were both at was this view, and you've caught me a few times saying they,
Mhm,
or like realizing that it's so easy for us to think they, the mythical they, are
mhm.
all wrong and we're right. But it's humbling to be like, oh, shoot, I did the same thing, right? Like we make the same
Yeah.
mistake. We're not always correct either.
It's all an exercise in humility. This whole thing is that so often when it's an ongoing relationship where there are these ongoing little battles or sometimes big battles, that I have co-created this cycle. Even though when I talk about it, of course, I'm going to assign a lot more of the responsibility to the other wrong-headed, unreasonable person, particularly if I'm talking to people who agree with me. But but it's important for me to look at how I have participated in this. And so the relational level and the content level. So let's say your content level, well grounded. Same thing about, crime and so on. If, looked into data and fact, people who study this, that's all well and good. It's how is it, what's the timing and how is it delivered in a relational way that is equal to adults and not somebody going one up and doing a gotcha with the facts. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to keep that in mind and see how I can be like, wanting to understand. Like, so here's the other question then. How, as opposed to like, what is the importance of sharing our thoughts or wanting to understand the other person's perspective as opposed to what it'd be so much easier to just not say anything.
Yeah.
And
And sometimes it all depends on the context and the setting. Sometimes, and in Braver Angels, we teach skills in how not to get into a conversation, you know, how to set boundaries, how to exit. Okay. So the big thing I'm saying here is only get into the conversations you want to get into. Because if you're dragged into one, if you're dragged in one because of what Sam or somebody else says, you have just lost your internal locus of control. Okay, because
okay.
they've said something that seems wrong or outrageous, whatever, and then I have to, in an activated way, respond. I don't have to, and particularly in a group. So I want to focus there for a little bit. Group settings are the worst for these sorts of difficult conversations.
Ooh, I'm interested because I'm thinking Thanksgiving table, holiday table. Tell me about this.
Yeah, they're the worst because whoever is the weakest link around the table, and it could be somebody on your side, like you're trying to use your skills and listen, and then somebody says, "Hey, I can't believe you said that racist thing," and then you're off to the, blah blah blah, right? And so, generally speaking, it's best to, unless you are unless you have a family that has a track record of doing this kind of conversation, or unless you're practicing advanced skills and you're entirely you're in your Zen zone. Okay, so I'm talking about not very often does this happen. It would be best in a group setting, like Thanksgiving meal, to just say, let's not get into it now. I don't want to go there now. Pass potatoes, because the odds of failure are too high. And I bet that one of the reasons that you and Sam have been silenced by the extended family is that you've had these spouts, uh, uh, between each other with other people around. And I would avoid that. But if you wanted to work on your skills and your relationship with Sam, you could get them off on the side and begin with questions. Begin with questions. So, the other day, Sam, you brought up the CRT thing and all that, and we didn't really have time to get into it. And so, what's your understanding of what's happening? And then ask further questions. You're a friggin' podcaster. You know how to ask questions, right? And be prepared to get on his wavelength.
What do you mean by
To
that? To get on his wavelength.
Why is this important to him? When people have passionate views about something, there's something they're worried about.
Mm.
There's a concern. There is a fear. There's a fear. See if you could get to the fear. But you only can do that if you're willing to not give your own view, at least for some time. And so, and you're redefining your relationship because you're expressing curiosity about somebody you basically respect. Okay. And then you get to what his concerns and fears are. And then next thing is so listening and question. And the next one is finding something to agree with. Okay. Because this is how you make a connection. You make a connection by listening and finding something to agree with. I don't know. Maybe, okay, not all DRI programs are created equal. There are bad programs out there, like in anything, right? You could say, yeah, I've read some, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but there's some crazy stuff that some people do. It's a lot of variation in this, okay? And so I agree. Or there's something about he wants everybody treated with equal dignity, and that white people should be as well. And you completely agree with that. Everybody has equal claims on dignity. And so I'm really with you. I'm just making that up. But something, if you get to people's concerns and their values, their fears, there's usually something you can agree with, okay? And then you might leave it like that. Or in Braver Angels, we have a skill, and I call it a pivot. And that is asking if he'd be interested in your thoughts on it,
So getting their buy-in.
getting their buy-in, getting their buy-in. And if he does not express interest, goes on a rant, don't give your view. I don't share my views with people who are not expressing any interest, because what I'm going to be doing is defining my relationship as I'm the battering ram here. And so I either go quiet or leave or whatever. But if you've connected with somebody in this way, by listening, asking questions, curiosity, find something to agree with, a lot of times they'll be okay with you expressing your views. And then if you're calm because you've connected, you're much more likely to do it with your best skills. I'm not, with a little humility, like I'm no expert on blah, 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 but I can just tell you what I know. I've been looking at my kids' curriculum, and I can just tell you what I'm seeing, and some examples. And for me, that's not brainwashing. I mean, maybe for you or for some others, it might be. It just, I know we don't see the similar. Let me just tell you how I view it. I'm giving you, that's an example of, in Brave Angels, a perspective sharing skill with I statements. My story, you just told me your story, I'm telling you my story, telling you why this issue or immigration is so important to me. But the key is I'm doing it in this calm way, not a one-up. And my goal is not to change his mind.
Oh, that is the key, isn't it?
Yes,
It is it is actually relationship first.
absolutely.
And I mean, I think I get it, but could you explain what's at risk if we don't have these conversations?
Well, if democracy is one continued conversation across differences. It's an ongoing debate. Okay, I mean, think about Jefferson and Hamilton. It's about. I think of democracy as collective problem solving, and all of us, right? How do we solve the problems, small and large, in our society, our world, our neighborhood, and we don't come about it thinking the same way. And so we have to be able to talk and then come to when we have to agree on something together, then we do that. Like where to have Thanksgiving dinner when there's when there's a debate about that. So these are skills of democratic living that we can't abandon at the local, the family level, the friendship level. We can't abandon it there and expect our political leaders to do it for us.
Hmm. I feel like that was a big truth bomb right there. Is it, as I'm hearing you talk about some of these requirements in order to show up as our best selves, to be able to like be calm, to listen and ask questions and keep coming back to listening in order to understand as opposed to fighting back. These require some level of self-discipline, almost
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
grown-up skills. Like, is that kind of what we're saying here? Is like
Yeah.
we can't be petulant children trying to one up each other on
Yeah.
the playground anymore. Is that
Yeah.
kind of the energy that we're going
Yeah, I
for?
think you're right. I think you're right. Now, it doesn't require sainthood, okay? And the thing about family is very predictable. Sam is pretty predictable over this time. Other family members, it's not your first rodeo with Sam and your family, okay? So the advantage is you can go in with a plan. And this is part of being a grown up, right? It's like been around this about 20 times. It went bad all 20 times. So maybe the 21st, instead of just getting activated and saying, I can't believe you're saying that as a privileged white male, whatever, right? Um, uh, um, how might I do this differently? Let me give you an example in my own world. So extended family. I live in, liberal blue, Zaybell, Minnesota. My daughter's relatives are from Texas, and her father-in-law is very conservative. And so Thanksgiving, Christmas, we all get together. And my daughter once said, "Oh, don't get into conversations about politics with her father-in-law." Okay, well, I don't do it when we're all together, but in the living room or somewhere else.
You're like, do you know what I do for a living, dear daughter?
Yeah, right, right. Come on, right. So here's how I begin. I say, what are people in your part of the country saying about? So I'm going to see him Thanksgiving. I might say about the government shutdown or about the tariffs or just something. What are people saying? And then he fills me in about what people are saying, and where he is in that mix. And and then I look for something I can agree with in there, even if it's like it's a complete mess and both sides are have some fault. And then I'm in because I have asked him, I have listened. We're not in an argument. I find something to agree with. And then we have these really great. I'm his favorite liberal. He brags to his friends about our conversations.
How do you maintain composure if anything feels like a personal attack? Like, I mean, I know we said
Yeah,
politics is personal,
right.
but it's one thing to talk about tariffs and another thing if, say, your child is queer, transgender, something,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then it becomes politicized as opposed to care for your children, for example.
yeah, yeah. So one of the things you can say is that now, if it's one to one, I know you care about my kids. That just went over a line for me. Okay, made me feel pretty sad, kind of upset. If it's in a group, I'm about to do a workshop on families and politics, so I've been reviewing the notes on it. If it's in a group, you could say something like, we don't have to get into it here. I just want to note that not everybody around the table sees it that way. And so could you pass the potatoes? In other words, there are some times when you feel you must dissent, but you don't have to get into an argument about it.
And it's important not to get into an argument in a group, is what I've heard
Especially in a group.
loud and clear.
Right.
Yeah.
And also the difference between truly hateful, which would be like an attack on your kids, versus somebody who has an opinion that marriage is for a man or woman. There's two genders. And part of what's happened on the blue or liberal side is that some people are viewing statements of opinions, which, by the way, most of the world holds, and throughout history, almost everybody held, but they're being revisited now. But to say the calm statement of an opinion is a form of hate speech. It's a violation of my kids, whatever. My own view is that's unfortunate because it means we can't really talk. Hate speech would be you're a queer kid. I mean, that's not usually what happens. Usually it's a strong statement of a traditional opinion, by a conservative or by the liberal. It's about we live in a white supremacist society that somebody takes as a terrible attack on their country, okay, or their religious values. But statements of opinions, even if they're bothersome, I don't think merit the kind of slam at you, because in a way that if you were spewing hate, it would be, hey, Sara, knock it off. Not going there. What the heck is that about? I mean, again, it would be because you just lost it here. That's relatively rare. And usually, by the way, in my observation, it only usually emerges terrible hate speech with escalation that both people have been part of.
Interesting. Because it is, if someone says that about, marriages between a man and a woman, but there's like a gay couple sitting at the table, you don't necessarily have to in that moment, but if you pulled the people aside and said, okay, I want to understand that, would you say something like, do you feel that these two people should not be in a marriage? Like, how would you follow up with that in a
Yeah,
productive
you
way,
could
not to
follow
escalate?
up one to one,
And
one
the
to
same
one.
sort of thing, like,
Yeah, yeah.
what is important to you about
Yeah, I want to
a marriage?
understand. I want to understand I get your value here. Lots of people hold that. In other words, you notice what I just did? I said lots of people hold that. Okay. I mean, this is the traditional view, understand it. You might even say years ago that was my view. Okay. So I'm not putting you down for your view. I'm curious about where you would go with that in terms of gay marriage in this country, which is not legal. Where would you go with it? It would be like abortion. If somebody had life begins at conception, I can get that. And where do they go in terms of public policy? Okay, would be where I'd want to. No, I wouldn't want to argue with them about their maybe religious belief about that. But public policy is where, and to ask and be willing to understand that, and then to say, okay, I get that. Um, can I give you my view on it?
Yeah. That's the discipline, isn't it? Is to check your urge to sort of shout back or
Mm-hmm.
hold a line or pick a fight and just say that doesn't feel right, but rather put your curiosity cap on and get them in a quiet moment and really put in the work to understand the people that you might otherwise try to brush off for the sake of our functioning democracy, communities, society.
But you don't have to do it with everybody. You don't have to do it with anyone. If you're having a bad time in your life and you don't want to get into these conversations, then feel free not to. So what I say is that not everybody has to have these conversations, but if you're up to it, if the relationship is important, there are ways to do this where you don't have to go silent or cut somebody off. And then, by the way, and never complain about them to your other relatives.
Why?
That's that's hostile. I mean, particularly if you're complaining in a very negative way. A lot of times when people lose their boundaries, they escalate, they get defensive, they get all worked up. Then they go silent, but they don't go silent entirely. They talk to their sibling about what a jerk Sam is. That's what people in families do. And if you're constantly complaining about somebody and the way they treat you, fix that on your end. Don't just keep complaining about them.
Mm.
And the fixing could be, Sarah, Sam, whenever we get into a conversation, I get really worked up. I get negative feelings about you, and I do really care about you and respect you. And I don't feel in a place in my life to be able to get into this with you without damage. So could we agree for now to not get into politics and just talk about other stuff?
That feels really good if I think one of the feelings I've grappled with is for someone I respect so much,
Mm-hmm.
how can they have these views?
Then that's your issue to work
Yeah.
on. Okay.
Yeah.
So what we say in our Brave Angels Families and Politics workshop, if 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 I can't emotionally self-regulate, knowing that my loved one has certain viewpoints, that's my problem. That's not their problem. Now, if they're coming at me all the time, well, then that's different. But a lot of it starts with, in family therapy terms, self-differentiation. Different. I'm my own person. You're your own person. You having certain views, I might wish you didn't. I mean, I might feel sad about it. But if I get emotionally dysregulated, then when I'm around you, I'm going to try to change you. And we know from lots of social psychology research that's you're the least influential when you're trying to change someone. Henry David Thoreau had this great line: beware, if you see someone approaching you with the obvious intent of doing you good, run for your life.
Now you're just speaking to my parenting. Gosh, I got to figure out how to not do that too. That's fascinating. Okay, Misasha, you've been an observer for a while. What do you have to share right now?
Well, first of all, I was taking copious notes. So, I think like so much of this, speaks to what I had learned as an attorney, right? The ability in order to really understand someone's position, you have to be able to say their position, and not say it because you believe it, but say it because it's their position, and go from that place to kind of find what we can agree on, and also how you structure your own views. And so, um, and that's really, that was something that I could do as an attorney, but in
Hmm.
personal life, obviously it's a lot more difficult, right?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot more emotion,
Hmm. Hmm.
when it comes to loved ones. So, like, watching you and Sara work through this was, um, really great, because I had not thought about that in sort of the relationship and the content disparity, and like the option to just ask that question back, and not, like, my instinct too is to be like, well, let me tell you, like, all of the facts that I have, and that's, we can't change minds like that,
Hmm.
and that can't be the goal in this way. So, um I learned a lot. In other words, like, I learned a lot, and I really appreciate Sara for being the guinea pig here, because we've had many text conversations about this, and I'm really proud of, Sara, you, for, like, really being open to all of this, because it's a
But
lot. Like, this is a fundamental thing, right? This is family and things that are deeply, deeply held.
But it was also interesting because I've had so many experiences like this. But Bill, when you asked me to come up with examples, it's like my brain had flushed them out to protect myself. Then it's just leaving me with this nebulously uncomfortable feeling of, like, quote, it always happens like this, as
Yeah.
opposed to
Yeah.
having examples. Is that, like, weird? I mean,
No, the relationships, all relationships occur in scenes, like a movie, a whole bunch of scenes, right? Beginning, middle, and end, and so relationship challenges occur in scenes. And if you think of it that way, who's around? What's the setting? Who starts? As I said, things go wrong in the first three exchanges. Well, what are your kids being brainwashed? Boom, that's a serve. That's an out of bounds serve. But if you return it, because I know something about this, you have just accepted the definition of the relationship, that I'm going to be your critic now, and you're going to be the defender. We just like you just signed up for that. But if you respond more constructively, you send it back. It gives the other person a chance to course correct.
I love the idea of stepping back and imagining that moment through the lens of a movie camera, and, like,
Mhm.
a quick moment to analyze what's happening right here.
Yes. And what are my choices? So we always have choices. But when we get emotionally activated, our range of choices goes down. And that's why I love the fact that you said, take a break, take a breath. Even here, a number of times in our conversation, you said, oh, I'm feeling this happening in my body. You're processing the feelings to try to calm yourself so you could stay engaged in our conversation.
So I could be a grown up. I'm a big girl now. Awesome. Is there anything else that we haven't asked that you think are important for people to consider as we head into the year end, usually celebratory times, but that can be, especially in a very divisive time in politics right now, sort of fraught?
Well, I guess the one other thing I'd add is to not turn our loved ones into many versions of politicians who we hate. If you don't like Trump, or you're glad Pelosi's gone, or whoever you don't like, whoever you get activated by in politics, we can't get at them directly. But when our family member talks like them, this adds to the emotional weight. And so Sam is not Trump, and cousin Jessica, who's always confronting everybody, they get names wrong. By the way, in every family, there's a Jessica as well as a Sam, and the Jessica pounces on you when you use the wrong name. You don't say prisoner, you say person with experience with the criminal justice system, Sara, and you want to go, give me a break, right? And particularly if you're conservative, you want to. So um, anyway, not to put the overlay of the national politics on a loved one. They are. That's why I'm glad you started. You respect him. You respect Sam. Let's keep that in mind.
I love that. Appreciate it. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for spending this time with us. I am grateful. I'm hopeful that I can show up as an even better, kinder, more sort of gently curious version of myself the next time Sam and I engage. And so for that, I thank you.
Well, I enjoyed this, and I appreciated your openness, as I said, all the way through. So taking the risk at the beginning, but at various times going, like when I asked you, I had asked about 4 times what your goal was, and about the immigration thing, and it was sort of like you went, "Oh, okay, I guess it was to change his mind," and so
Totally.
I know, but I appreciated your kind of out there with the emotion because you've responded cognitively first. Well, he was not in possession of the facts, and then we kind of got there because that's what you can let go of.
Okay. That sounds great. Well, thank you again.
Thank
Okay,
you.
my pleasure.